let's start off on our topic of gut health. And I think, we have people in the program that are at very different stages of gut health, gut dysbiosis, and some are reporting even the most simple things like taking cod liver oil has improved their gut health dramatically. Other people are really struggling. And so I think what I want to do today is, cover the topic broadly, but I'm going to start off with this very short 5-minute video. And with that, let's talk about gut health. But I think this video is really important because it shows the profound complexity and interconnectivity of the gut. So here we go.
Across the whole planet, humans eat on average between 1 and 2.7 kilograms of food a day. That's over 365 kilograms a year per person, and more than 28,800 kilograms over the course of a lifetime. And every last scrap makes its way through the digestive system. Comprised of 10 organs, covering 9 meters, and containing over 20 specialized cell types, this is one of the most diverse and complicated systems in the human body. Its parts continuously work in unison to fulfill a singular task, transforming the raw materials of your food into the nutrients and energy that keep you alive. Spanning the entire length of your torso, the digestive system has 4 main components. First, there's the gastrointestinal tract, a twisting channel that transports your food and has an internal surface area of between 30 and 40 square meters, enough to cover half a badminton court. Second, there's the pancreas, gallbladder, and liver, a trio of organs that break down food using an array of special juices. Third, the body's enzymes, hormones, nerves, and blood all work together to break down food, modulate the digestive process, and deliver its final products. Finally, there's the mesentery, a large stretch of tissue that supports and positions all your digestive organs in the abdomen, enabling them to do their jobs. The digestive process begins before food even hits your tongue. Anticipating a tasty morsel, glands in your mouth start to pump out saliva. We produce about 1.5 liters of this liquid each day. Once inside your mouth, chewing combines with the sloshing saliva to turn food into a moist lump called the bolus. Enzymes present in the saliva break down any starch. Then your food finds itself at the rim of a 25-centimeter long tube called the esophagus, down which it must plunge to reach the stomach. Nerves in the surrounding esophageal tissue sense the bolus's presence and trigger peristalsis, a series of defined muscular contractions. That propels the food into the stomach, where it's left at the mercy of the muscular stomach walls, which pound the bolus, breaking it into chunks. Hormones secreted by cells in the lining trigger the release of acids and enzyme-rich juices from the stomach wall that start to dissolve the food and break down its proteins. These hormones also alert the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder to produce digestive juices and transfer bile, a yellowish-green liquid that digests fat, in preparation for the next stage. After 3 hours inside the stomach, the once shapely bolus is now a frothy liquid called chyme, and it's ready to move into the small intestine. The liver sends bile to the gallbladder, which secretes it into the first portion of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Here, it dissolves the fats floating in the slurry of chyme so they can be easily digested by the pancreatic and intestinal juices that have leached onto the scene. These enzyme-rich juices break the fat molecules down into fatty acids and glycerol for easier absorption into the body. The enzymes also carry out the final deconstruction of proteins into amino acids and carbohydrates into glucose. This happens in the small intestine's lower regions, the jejunum and ileum, which are coated in millions of tiny projections called villi. These create a huge surface area to maximize molecule absorption and transference into the bloodstream. The blood takes them on the final leg of their journey to feed the body's organs and tissues. But it's not over quite yet. Leftover fiber, water, and dead cells sloughed off during digestion make it into the large intestine, also known as the colon. The body drains out most of the remaining fluid through the intestinal wall. What's left is a soft mass called stool. The colon squeezes this byproduct into a pouch called the rectum, where nerves sense it expanding and tell the body when it's time to expel the waste. The byproducts of digestion exit through the anus, and the food's long journey, typically lasting between 30 and 40 hours, is finally complete.
Well, I think that's a good way to start off. I think they miss one important piece, which we'll talk about, but just seeing the complexity of it, I think it's really important. Let me just take a short break here to switch back to my proper speakers. Phone. And there we go. So I usually start off my health ministry program with where did you learn that? And the reason why I put this at the very beginning is because so many people are on antacids. And you know, that stomach lining is producing strong, very strong acid. So you need that strong acid. And if you're going against your stomach and your digestive process, you're going to have poor digestion. It's that simple. But what's really interesting about the whole digestive system is it really speaks to the four mechanisms of disease that Dr. Carter and I talk about. Poor repair and recovery. You are what you absorb, not what you eat. And absorption is such a critical piece. The whole absorption is such a critical piece of repair and recovery, but digestion is such a critical piece of absorption. So very, very important mechanism. Sensitivities and dysbiosis. You throw things down in your stomach that you're sensitive to, and you may not have been sensitive to these particular food items all your life. Something has changed in your gut that most likely is making you sensitive. That's a real big problem in health. Thrive versus survive. So many hormones. Dr. Carter mentioned melatonin, but so many hormones, neurotransmitters are synthesized in the gut. And then stealth infections. If you don't have good repair and recovery mechanisms, then stealth infections that otherwise may not affect you will affect you. And there are stealth infections of the gut. Parasites, like Dr. Carter said, everybody has some level of parasite. Dr. Tremp told me that 25% of our population have parasitic infections severe enough to be affecting their health. So it's really a critical thing. And what we do in our program is we look at things from two phases. So I have a little picture here. This actually came from a hotel. Someone posted this. They went into the room and saw this nasty water in the hotel. But really what I'm talking about here is look at this sink as being your gut. And we have dirty water spilling in, and then we have a drain that's not draining well. Well, you got to stop the faucet from leaking, and you got to drain the sink. There's two phases to really improving gut health at the most simplistic level. And if you don't do this, it truly is a domino effect. We have key drivers: low stomach acid sensitivities, kidney and liver dysfunction, and really much more. But one of the challenges that we face is, and Dr. Carter will speak to this at any time he wants, is that let's just say you're worried about being a diabetic. It's extremely easy to tell where you are on the diabetes continuum. We can measure fasting glucose, fasting insulin, triglycerides, uric acid, A1C. And with that information, we can place you very accurately on a diabetes continuum. But where you are in the gut health continuum is much more difficult to measure. Your symptoms are probably the most important things. And it's not just what's going on in your gut. It may be that you're a poor healer. It may be that you lack energy. So many different things can be titrated back to poor digestion, poor absorption. So one of the things I like to inform people of is so many people, when I ask them a question, say, just once in a while. When it comes to the gut and everything, but particularly in the gut, just once in a while is unacceptable. If you're having gut issues just once in a while,
bloating, constipation, a little reflux, esophageal tightening, so you're having a hard time swallowing, diarrhea. Even if it's once a month, that's unacceptable. You need to be perfect when it comes to symptomology. Otherwise, you're probably already on the wrong side of the gut health continuum. And it's just very difficult to measure that precisely. So relying on you and your testimony as to what's going on in your gut is extraordinarily important. So I have a bunch of slides. We won't spend too much time on this, but poor gut health at the root of disease, fatigue, constipation, cold sores, rashes, diabetes. I'll go into that very shortly. Mood disorders, where you're producing your neurotransmitters, frequent colds and flu, immunity. 80% of your immunity largely stems from the gut in so many different ways. Headaches, brain fog. So it's not just about the gut. Any of these symptoms that are no big deal, just have a little anxiety. It could be you're not producing hormones properly in your gut because the raw materials aren't being broken down, digestible, absorbable, and available for the liver to carry out its main functions. So here's a little bit of a joke. Do not poo-poo any gut-related symptoms. You can laugh now, or you can hold it till later. But really, inflammation of the gut lining may lead to all kinds of intestinal problems. Small intestinal bacterial overload. You have diarrhea, SIBO. That's a very strong correlation between small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or overload and diarrhea. You should never have that. If you have it once in a while, you probably don't have good stomach acid upstream. So little organisms that are pathogenic can make it down into the intestine. Irritable bowel syndrome, diverticulitis, intestinal permeability. So we have the same list of problems. So this came from the TED Talk that we just played. And so if one cannot think well, love well, sleep well, if one has not dined well, okay, and there's the link to the TED Talk, anybody interested in looking at this further. So the gut is working very hard on behalf of our health, very hard indeed. And that's why, athletes are going to avoid, having a meal too close to an exercise event because they don't want the energy they want to pour into athletics tied up in the gut. But if you're not well, it's the same kind of thing. It's a very high intensity activity of digestion. And that's why intermittent fasting can lead to brain clarity. The brain is a very, very vascular, energetic tissue. So when you aren't stressing your body with digestion, you actually experience that brain clarity. Some people are eating one meal a day. So they have a whole long period of time where they're not putting stress on their system in the digestive process, and they feel much more energetic and have much more clarity. We've kind of, where'd you learn that? We've kind of been told we have to eat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, small portions. You're constantly putting your digestive system into an activity phase that's just draining resources from other parts of your body. So just something to consider. And I couldn't find the exact same image, but I think what Ted didn't talk about was 2 things. But I have a 4-legged stool. It's nice and balanced, but I believe in most instances, particularly in the modern world, we're missing 1 leg. Yeah, I can sit on the stool and keep it balanced, but it's very hard. So the digestion legs of the stool, particle size. We talked about chewing well, breaking the particles down. And I'm a chemist, and the more surface area you have, the faster reactions go. If I put a chunk of steel into some vessel with some acid, it'll very, very slowly dissolve. But if I grind up that steel and with sandpaper have very small fines, it'll dissolve instantly. You know, if you ever use one of those hand warmers or foot warmers, those are very, very fine iron filings. Okay. And so the surface area makes a difference. So chewing is a very important part of digestion, but there's more to it than that. So particle size, acid, microbiome, enzymes, those are sort of the big four legs of the stool. So digestion starts here. And you can, as you heard from Ted, it starts even before. I was telling Dr. Carter how my wife is going away for a few days to the beach and she's making me pumpkin pies. I almost didn't make this presentation, but then she told me they weren't ready yet. But I already had that Pavlovian response of saliva being produced. So it's important to chew your food to allow the release of enzyme to begin proper digestion, but it's really breaking down the food into small particles. Now I have a couple things on what Ted Talk referred to a little bit, but your stomach is extremely muscular. It's not just this static vessel. It's churning and pushing around. And I have some videos that I'm not going to play, but links to them so you can see what it's all about. But I'm just going to do a little chemistry. For those of you that need your afternoon nap, you can take that right now. But basically, in chemistry, if we want things to go fast, we use something called ball media. But here's kind of a chart of how fast reactions go versus particle size of things that we put into the solution to make it go. And nanoparticles, somewhat flakes, but platelets and rods, bigger things actually make things, break things down faster to make smaller and smaller particles. I'm just saying, you know, really your gut is a chemical experiment, really. So let's look at this. So time is of the essence to get complete and proper digestion. So you need the big four. And I think when you look at it, this 50% of stomach contents are emptied in 2.5 to 3 hours, total emptying the stomach in 4 to 5 hours. And then there's your 30 hours through the entire gut. So anything you can do to speed up the process will ensure better digestion. And the most important thing about this is food is not about calories. We get told, you know, where'd you learn that? Calories, calories, calories. Nutrients are the most important thing. I guarantee you, nutrient deficiency is arguably the most important thing that makes you hungry. And nutrients, what they didn't really talk about, the minerals, which I talked about at the beginning of the year, the genesis of health, are probably the hardest thing for you to digest. And you only have a short amount of time to completely liquefy things. So you have to liquefy everything from solid to a liquid in the 2.5 to 3 to 4 hours. So let's just, some foods take longer to digest than others. And most of the time, they're just talking about macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And basically, the idea here is what they're saying is that proteins are somewhat harder to digest than carbs and fats. But really, the micronutrients are even harder to absorb. That's what we have to focus on. So in 2019, Dr. Carter and I wrote a blog. We wrote several blogs. We haven't finished it yet, but 26 ways you stay hungry. And number 8 is mineral deficiencies. And mineral deficiency can be just like that sink. We don't have enough minerals coming in the food choices we're making, or we're not absorbing those minerals well. In other words, we're not digesting those minerals well. They're hard to digest. Look upon them as being little rocks, okay? It's not easy to take a rock and liquefy it. That's why you have to have super strong acid. I tell folks in my program, go out and take some vinegar and then go to the hardware store and take some muriatic acid and put it on cement. And then come back an hour later and rinse it off. Under the vinegar, you're going to see no change to the cement. But under the muriatic acid, you're going to see fresh, clean cement. The muriatic acid, very similar to your stomach acid, it's hydrochloric acid, is strong enough in the muriatic acid to dissolve or digest the upper layer of that cement. And cement is just made of stone and binder. So we eat plenty of calories. Being overweight is thought to imply one thing, the excess of calories. But I think what it really is a lack of nutrients, particularly minerals. Your brain only has one signal mechanism if it's lacking something, and that is to make you hungry. And we're all interpreting it as, I need calories. But in fact, you need nutrients. So that's really the take-home lesson there. And this, I'm going over the top with this one because it's something I firmly believe in. At a talk I gave at a health expo a couple of years ago, when I was introduced, I crawled across the stage to try to create what's called an "oh my God" or "what the heck is he doing?" an adrenaline imprint moment. And I had different props on the stage, and I picked them up and I put them in my mouth. And I'm saying, why do you think a toddler puts things in their mouth? Okay, because they're programmed to kill themselves for population control or something? No, they're literally proliferating the diversity of organisms in the microbiome. It's natural for a child to pick up a leaf and chew on it, or a little dirt. Get your children good and dirty. And this actually was something that was presented at a talk. Not that I presented, but it's on our blog from the folks at Stanford, this husband-wife couple that are showing the narrowing and diminution of our microbiome from generation to generation. At the end, they basically say, get out and get dirty. And everybody says, let your children be dirty. But I think this should change to get your everybody good and dirty. I see people with masks that are going out and mowing their lawn. There are little organisms on those dust particles. How much saliva do we swallow every day? 1.5 liters. The mucus picks up things. It's a sort of an absorbent. And those organisms are transferred into the gut. And the good ones that like strong acid are beneficial to your digestion. We've adapted to that, and they'll help build your microbiome. Go to the ocean. The wave crashes. You can taste the salt on your tongue. It's going into the mucus and you're swallowing it. Or I can guarantee you there are little ocean organisms on that as well that you should be absorbing. That's what, Jack Kruse talks about. Go to the ocean, sit in the water, populate your microbiome. Very, very important piece. Therapeutic potential of fulvic acid in chronic inflammatory disease and diabetes. This comes from the soil. Fulvic and humic acid. So, I'm learning every day too. And so I now get a fulvic humic mineral mix, and I add a couple drops to my drinking water every day to get much more diversity of minerals. This would not be full of organisms per se. This is a sanitized thing, but we're getting the minerals and the organism. And this might be where I take it a little bit too far, but bentonite clay is a natural remedy, a brief review. And it's really important. The bentonite clay does a couple different things. Number one, it's full of minerals. Number two, it comes in as a particle that's not so easy to absorb, but just like in the chemistry experiment, it will help your gut grind up the food even more to make it more easily absorbable. And I'd say we're the only species on land, mammal species on land, that does not use some type of a gritty substance in digestion. If you don't put grit out in your chicken coop, they'll stop laying eggs. They need the grit for real proper digestion. Extremely important. Okay, so eating dirt can be good for your belly. researchers find. Now, look, don't just go out and dine on dirt. I've been doing that recently, but you probably need to sanitize it first, kill everything because we don't know what's in there, E. coli, whatever. But, grit is highly neglected as a constituent of digestion, good digestion. It's part of that fourth leg of the stool that we're ignoring. So dining on dirt is nothing out of the ordinary, except in fancy culture. But you'd be surprised how extensive, getting dirt into your system or getting something that doesn't break down easily and is a rough particle that when that stomach does the churning can facilitate digestion. So 2 more slides on this, but I think here are 2. One is the TED Talk we saw, and here's another one that just shows how mechanically active and muscular our stomach is at pulverizing and breaking down that food as a very important step to digestion. And then here's another one, the kite folds of the wall of small intestines. So it's not just the stomach, are mixing and churning. Another video, highly ignored as a digestive component. So we're going to get on to just some basic topics now. What is acid reflux anyway? And you can have acid reflux and it can be completely silent. You don't even have to know it. Some people just have eroding teeth. Some people have a hard time swallowing because the acid mist, not a big, sloshing of acid that doesn't make it very far up, just a mist can get into your throat and cause inflammation in your throat and constriction. So it's harder to swallow. Don't ignore that. I know very prestigious doctors who've had esophageal widening procedures, and they're not fixing the most fundamental problem, that they're getting silent reflux up into their upper esophagus. Then, of course, heartburn. What is heartburn? It's just acid up in the esophagus. This is delicate tissue. This is very robust tissue along the lining of the stomach, very used to and adapted to very strong acid, whereas this isn't. Do a simple experiment. Put some vinegar on your finger, you don't feel a thing. Make a little cut, put some vinegar on, it's very tender. That's really what acid reflux or heartburn is the strong acid irritating a very delicate esophageal lining here. So, but it's not the only. You can have GERD, gastrointestinal reflux disease, and not have heartburn. So there are many different manifestations of it. So strong stomach acid creates a hostile environment for bad bacteria. If you have strong acid, very unlikely you're going to have SIBO or diarrhea, because that's really driven by pathogens getting past the stomach and into the intestines where it shouldn't be. It also supports the growth of the good bacteria necessary in proper digestion. H. pylori, we'll talk about that in a moment. H. pylori reduces your stomach acid. Nobel Prize in Medicine 2005 for stomach ulcers. But low levels of H. pylori that don't cause stomach ulcers can be enough in a gut that's not in very good shape, enough to reduce your stomach acid so that you may get reflux, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. But what's really going on is H. pylori produces an antacid, a base or an antacid, and the good bacteria that help with digestion start dying off because they live well in the strong acid, but they do not thrive or live well in the weak acid. That's what H. pylori is doing. It's all about survival. It's producing something that's antagonistic to the acid so it can thrive, and the good bacteria that might otherwise kill it doesn't do so well. So you can see it's a complex thing to bring the microbiome back. We have to get the acid back, and they work together. So it's chicken and the egg. So we need to do a little bit of both to get and slowly acclimatize your gut back to good acid. But like with that dirty sink, with the faucet still pushing dirty water into your stomach sink, H. pylori is like the faucet still running. So you're shoveling against the tide. So a tragic thing is that reflux, bloating, all these things follow what's called a U curve. And so here we have weak stomach acid, and here we have strong stomach acid. So why does Prilosec or antacids or things like that reduce acid, the proton pump inhibitors, the acid blockers, why do they alleviate your acid reflux phenomenon? It's very simple. When your acid is really weak, you are not fermenting your food. It's barely breaking down. So you produce very little gas and you have very little reflux. When your stomach acid is really strong, you're not fermenting your food. And when you ferment it, you're producing carbon dioxide gas, which creates pressure, which creates pain, which creates bloating, which can then lead to a reflux effect. You may not feel it as heartburn. Once again, it could be esophageal tightening, bad breath, simply bad breath. It's a little mist of stomach juices, if you will. So that can be another sign that you have some silent reflux. But when you're in the strong acid regime, it's very unlikely to happen. When you're in the weak acid regime, that's very unlikely to happen. The only problem here you have great absorption. Here you have really bad absorption. So why is this tragic? So many people have poor absorption and they're taking the medication to avoid the reflux and discomfort, bloating, whatever. But to get from this, what I'll call the death zone in terms of absorption, to the thrive zone, you're going to have to go across this high reflux zone potentially, or high bloating zone, or high stomach discomfort zone. It's sadly almost unavoidable. So just be aware of that if you're in this area here with antacids and weak stomach acid, there may be some discomfort to move across this U curve to this side where you're no longer having those symptoms and you have great absorption. So let's see. Symptoms of low stomach acid: bloating, indigestion, chronic fatigue, rectal itching, heartburn. I've had people with rectal itching. I've had people with anal cancer. H. pylori is a carcinogen, at different levels. At low levels, it's probably not a carcinogen, but at higher levels, for a long period of time, left ignored, it can cause esophageal cancer, gastric cancer, colon cancer, and anal cancer. Heartburn, acne, belching, diarrhea, weak, peeling, cracked fingernails. That's protein malabsorption. Sensitivities, allergies, hair loss, autoimmunity, constipation, excess flatulence. So there's a lot going on there. And here's from Dr. Jockers, lives somewhere down near the Atlanta area where Dr. Carter is. I won't go into this. I've never done it, but the baking soda test. How do you know if you have good acid or not? So the steps are: mix a quarter teaspoon of baking soda in some water, drink it, and pay attention to this scale here. I won't go into it, but it's like, if you're not belching, you probably don't have sufficient acid within a certain amount of time. So it's an interesting test. So I think what we're going to do is we'll make this a two-parter, because next time I want to go over case studies as well. But we'll stop here, and next week we'll go over sort of the microbiome, and then some solutions that we suggest, And then a really, really interesting case study on how we proved that malabsorption led to a incorrect diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. So with that, we'll stop the share. And Michael, do you want to chime in maybe on the baking soda test? Have you had people do that before, and what do you think of it?
No, I've actually not had that done. I actually had the probe test done on me out in Seattle at why am I blanking on his name?
Jonathan Wright.
Yeah, which is a very uncomfortable test. You know, and at the end of the day, my acid production was normal, but it was just interesting.
Right. So what you're saying is to truly test the acid, they got a probe down there and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So this is a surrogate. But what we've used, in the past, we gave the talk on the erythrocyte sedimentation rate, but symptoms alone are probably enough to establish. But if you want to go beyond reasonable doubt, that might add to the conversation on or your understanding of your own personal gut acid. So Jim says, I got the Moderna vaccine. I've noticed that my hay fever allergies are worse. Do you think there's a correlation? I may do another round of ivermectin. Make sure my runny nose is not from a virus. Michael?
Well, again, no one really truly knows the potential side effects that any of these vaccines have, and how it can modulate your immune system. So, it just remains to be seen. And again, there are a number of side effects that have been reported based on it. Yeah.
Right. Jim also says, I've been taking sublingual melatonin for years. Is the liposomal version of melatonin much more absorbable?
Well, I mean, so when it's wrapped in a phospholipid base, yes, it is definitely more absorbable. I like the Quicksilver brand from Christopher Shade. And there's, just great information on the benefits of enhancing melatonin, because as we get older, our melatonin levels decrease. And most people know melatonin for its uses in, enhancing sleep, but, it has, anti-aging effects, it has antiviral effects. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why younger people are generally more resilient against, infections, because they have higher melatonin levels. So, so that's another strategy, especially if you're 40 plus years old, because I think it starts to decline at age 40, 45. Those levels start to decline. So great to add that to the regimen.
Michael, fasting. Lynn asks, fasting, what if you're hypoglycemic?
You have to be more careful with that, but using the supplements to help make you more the glucose levels more stabilized, using things like berberine and chromium. Those are all, good things to start balancing that before you do the intermittent fasting.
Now, the question is, do you use Shilajit? I think Shailajit to get your fulvic minerals.
Shilajit. Yeah, that's just another form, of, minerals and so forth. I don't particularly use that one. I actually like the, before I was using the cell core stuff. I was using the plant-based minerals from Trace Minerals Research. So those are really good. And then with the cell core line, they have a mineral formula that is really, really good. But still, doing that, the cell core, it's best to do the cell core stuff as a part of their, 4 or 5 phase program, because it's quite comprehensive in addressing, a lot of issues and so forth.
What does it mean if you pass the baking soda test, but a GI map says you have H. pylori?
Well, I mean, you can still, everyone has H. pylori. H. pylori is still, a normal bacteria. It's just when it gets high, then that becomes problematic. So yeah, on the GI map, if it's high, but more importantly, if you have virulence factors, that's a sign that you really have to be aggressive at eradicating that, because if you have virulence factors, then that increases your risk for gastric cancers.
Thank you. And I would say the baking soda test, not having experience with it, is probably the least accurate.
Right.
And H. pylori will, like Dr. Carter says, it can be commensal, but what we've shown is that, measuring it, the organism really lives in the blood. That's why it causes ulcers. It's living in the lining where the blood is. And so we do a peripheral blood test for H. pylori. And I now have enough data to show that well below the threshold of, quote, normal by LabCorp, and Quest doesn't even do a blood test for H. pylori anymore. I don't understand that. They don't really appreciate the fact that even low levels of it can disrupt stomach acid. So I think that would be a much more accurate test to add to your portfolio of testing to really understand what's going on. And we have a thing, I know a woman who may be on here tonight, but it's tomorrow night, it's Tuesday night, who has severe migraines to very little fragrance. Does this oftentimes break down to it being a gut problem? Fix the gut, and this may resolve? Michael, any comments?
Well, say it again. I'm sorry.
So a woman has very severe migraines to just a little bit of fragrance. Will the gut, fixing the gut, help that?
Oh, no. So she has, like a chemical sensitivity. So the body is very hypersensitive to those things. So that's more, I mean, the gut obviously has a role in that as well. But the immune system is being hypervigilant. So, there's like the Cyrex labs. I can't remember which array it is, but it actually shows a whole array of various chemicals and so forth to show that your body is having an overactive immune response. So it's really, obviously, the first rung is really clearing out your house of artificial things like, whatever, if you're washing your clothes with traditional stuff, Tide, whatever, Gain, you really want to use something more organic. The plug-in air fresheners, very, very problematic. You have to be very concerned about what you're putting on your skin, hair, and so forth. So eliminating those things to give the body time to kind of start the detoxification process. But then you want the liver to be enhanced, because the liver is the main detoxification organ. So again, that's kind of where I found like the Cell Core, product line is very, very good at that and efficient at that over time in helping with that situation. But yes, the gut, but just addressing the gut issues won't alleviate the multiple chemical sensitivity.
Right. But, it's all, I don't want to say it's all connected, but make sure the gut is good anyway, because it has
absolutely. Yeah.
What role does the gut have in hair loss?
Well, I mean, absorption, if you're not absorbing the nutrients, most people know that biotin is one of the, nutrients that is key in hair loss. But, hair loss is quite multifactorial, most commonly with hypothyroidism, And again, from an autoimmune type perspective, but hormonally, if you have high dihydrotestosterone levels, that can contribute. But from a leaky gut standpoint, due to the molecular mimicry, due to, foods or underlying pathogens, everyone's familiar with leaky gut and how the body responds to that. And it really kind of goes to whatever your weak link is. So for instance, if your weak link is your skin, and let's say you're eating gluten, dairy, grains, whatever, and your body's reacting to that, and your skin is the weak link, then it can manifest as, eczema or psoriasis or whatever. But let's say your hair follicles are your weak link, and your body is, attacking those hair follicles mistakenly because, that food that you're eating kind of sort of looks like your hair follicles. So it just kind of gets in the way, but the body's trying to do what it normally does, but that is your weak link. So it could very well be a food sensitivity. So that, you have to go down to a lot of different pathways, kind of peeling back the onion. It could be also, heavy metal toxicity or mycotoxins. But obviously the gut is, you always want to address the gut health no matter what you're dealing with.
Absolutely. Michael, what are virulence factors?
Those are key to H. pylori. So those are just markers in the GI map that show that particular strain of the H. pylori is releasing those virulence factors that make it more pathogenic and increase the risk of cancer. So,
thank you.
Yeah, so I do the GI map, quite common, and it's a really good test.
Lynn commented that she's done the baking soda test, never belched. Other symptoms confirm my low stomach acid, and I take HCl.
Again, it's not just all about HCl. Still, taking that, but with digestive enzymes is important. But yeah, we got to see where the H. pylori is along that continuum. I don't know where we are on that one though. We got to see what level, but it would be a good idea to do the GI map to see if there are any virulence factors there.
How can one resolve arthritis by improving gut health?
Again, arthritis, even osteoarthritis, versus rheumatoid arthritis can have an autoimmune component. Of course, rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmune, but just plain old regular osteoarthritis can have an autoimmune component as well. So again, it kind of goes back to that leaky gut, is that you're a weak link. So the body is, attacking those organs, mistakenly. So balancing the immune system, using natural anti-inflammatory, supplements like liposomal curcumin is really, really good. Wobenzyme, serrapeptidase, those are great proteolytic enzymes, eating as organic as possible, anti-inflammatory diet. So,
right.
But it's not really appreciated how important gut health is in the genesis of most disease, patterns actually.
And what we also see is that poor oral hygiene, root canals, pockets, abscesses that you don't even know about. We've had a lady go in with what was supposedly a couple root canals that were giving her no problem, and they found 5 abscesses. Mm-hmm. Those are the kinds of things that can trigger arthritis as well.
Yeah.
Is betaine hydrochloride available in a non-tablet form for those who can't swallow pills?
I'm not sure about that, but it's probably available as a capsule as well. So you can just open up the capsule I'm pretty sure it's a capsule form as well.
She's afraid it'd be harmful to dissolve the pill and drink it. With someone like that, we just have to titrate up slowly, start with some fermented foods, some apple cider vinegar, diluted. You don't have to jump right up to the strong acid. And, what is betaine hydrochloride? It's just a molecule that holds and then easily releases hydrochloric acid. But, if you want your stomach to make hydrochloric acid, you have to have chloride.
Right.
A lot of people are salt deficient. So they're lacking chloride, sodium chloride. You need that hydrochloric acid. You need that counter ion. So there's a number of different things that can lead to poor stomach acid. And like Dr. Carter said, just pouring hydrochloric acid into your stomach, it's a just-in-time manufacturing plant down there. So you pour some in and it elevates now, but you stop and, it goes right back down. So, do you want to really be taking betaine hydrochloride, 4 capsules, whatever, to with every meal? No, you want to restore your gut. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You just like, take cod liver oil rather than eating fish. You should do both. You got to get your gut to a certain threshold of readaptation and acceptance for that betaine hydrochloride to sort of push you over the top to really good acid again. So it's just a facilitator. It's not a miracle pill. There's no miracle pill for the gut.
And
every
again,
pill you do take,
stopping the production of the HCl.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. So that's the last question. Look at that, 12:58. So this is repeated Tuesday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern. Different link, but it's the same link every week for Monday, same link every week for Tuesday, but different Monday, Tuesday. And next time we'll carry on gut health. Love your questions, but also have some more of a solution-oriented or suggestion-oriented program. The reason why I played that TED Talk at the beginning is it's not just a simple single solution. It's a process. It's a journey. The U curve for reflux. It's a journey to get to the good side of stomach acid. So, all right, folks, thanks very much. And hopefully we catch you next time.